you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond
The sickest NHL podcast. Brought to you by TCS Customs and Logistics. Moving pieces, delivering peace of mind. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here in the Sick Podcast Network. I am Jimmy Murphy. My co-host Pierre McGuire will be joining me shortly. He's stuck in traffic coming from Logan Airport to Winchester, Mass. Usually about a 15 to 20 minute ride without traffic, but there's never no traffic in Boston, especially on the expressway where he is trying to get to Winchester right now, to where he's staying for the next few days as he attends Ray Shero's son Kyle's wedding tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow or Saturday, one or the other. He'll tell us when he comes on, but so he will be joining me shortly in 15 minutes. We will also be joined by another man who just informed me that he is stuck in traffic in Toronto, where I hear traffic is always pretty bad as well. And that is former Kings assistant GM and Carolina Hurricanes senior advisor Mike Futa will be joining us shortly here. You can also find him now on Sportsnet on the hockey show from noon to 2 every day. He does a great job. Him and Matt Marchese there going bouncing around the league. And so that's what we will do with Futs when he comes on shortly. But if you want, I'll take a few questions from you now early on if you want to pop them up in a bit. But my reaction quickly to Panthers-Canes. The Panthers close it out with a 5-3 victory. How about that? 2 nights in a row, I've given you a good anytime goal scorer, Anton Lindell, lighting the lamp last night. But one thing I want to pose out there is a question. And if you want, you can come at me with some other guys over the course of time. It doesn't just have to be in the last 5 years. But I'm just going to limit my point, my theory and claim here to the last 5 years, that I think Carter Verhaeghe is the best clutch playoff scorer in the NHL in the Stanley Cup playoffs since 2020. And if you think I'm wrong, I'd love to hear who you think has been better. But I just think about all the game-winning goals and the overtime winners that he's had and just the clutch goals in general that he's scored in the playoffs, you know, in the last 3 to 5 years. It's been amazing. And I think he deserves a lot more props maybe than he's getting. I think he's kind of one of those under-the-radar guys, obviously not under the radar with Panthers fans, but in fans in general, I think this guy should be looked at as Mr. Clutch, at least in the last 5 years. I'm trying to think other players over the years that kind of did what he's been doing, but you know, go ahead, fire away with some players if you got off the top of your head. But until then, if you want, I see a couple questions lining up. Let's take a few while we wait for Pierre and Futs. What do we got? Chris L. Question for Jimmy. Brendan Shanahan was the epitome of a dog on a bone. 17 seasons, over 100 penalty minutes and 3 cups. Why did he not stay true to himself as a manager? Cheers. You know, I think one of the things, I'm not trying to defend Brendan because I think he had a lot of faults with the way he, you know, with his performance as a manager in Toronto. I think he could have done a better job, and he'd probably tell you that himself. The one thing I'll say, though, you talk about players, you know, dog on a bone and all that. They don't really like him anymore, right? So it's hard when I think for a player like that, and I see it here in Boston, I think him and Cam Neely are good parallels. I don't think Neely's done a bad job per se as president of hockey operations of the Boston Bruins, but I think he could do a better job. But I think one of the things is that, you know, guys like him and Shanahan who played the same type of game, power forwards, come from that old school mentality, like to fight, could score 50 goals. Like you said, rack up penalty minutes. We're always a physical presence out there. Those players are unicorns now. And I think it's hard for guys like Shanahan and Neely sometimes to understand how there can't be more of those or why more players can't play like that. And sometimes what happens is, and I've seen it a lot in Boston, where the Bruins will sign a guy just based on his size and think that he's going to be the next Cam Neely. I've seen it, you know, with Trent Frederick, I think, is a perfect example. Or lately, I know he's a defenseman. He's not a winger. But Nikita Zadorov, you know, does Zadorov bring a physical presence? Yeah. But he also has a lot of untimely penalties. He's not as smart about it. And also, it's hard to play that game with the rules today. So I think it's two sides of the coin there. But I do agree, he could have done a better job in Toronto. All right, next question. What do we got? Anything? Jimmy Pierre, how's it going? What's the latest on the timeline of the Bruins coaching search? When are we anticipating decision? That is the $1 million question, at least where I am right now. I'll tell you that. I don't know what's going on. I was told, and I haven't been able to get to the bottom of what happened, but I was told early on in the week, as you saw, I reported here on the show, I reported on social media, on Twitter, that they had reached the money stage of talks with Jay Woodcroft. And I stand by that. I think it did get to that point. I don't know what happened, why it went south, or, maybe it just wasn't that deep into the money talks, but it had reached that point. And obviously Jay Woodcroft isn't the coach right now. And now everyone's saying Marco Sturm is a front runner, but then Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects reported a couple days back, I think it was a day after me reporting about Woodcroft, that Sturm was going to be the next coach. That hasn't happened yet either. I don't know. I apologize. I've been trying to get to the bottom of this. I don't have any idea why things have stalled there. Maybe there's another guy that's in the mix that's come in, or maybe they just aren't seeing eye to eye. Who knows? But I would think you'd see something. This is just me hypothetically speaking. You'd see something by tomorrow. Maybe they can announce it tomorrow and then have a press conference on Monday. That would be the ideal situation. But we'll wait and see what happens. I'll keep digging for you. And if I hear anything, and I've got a couple texts out right now, even if I hear it while we're on the air here, we'll do that. But let's go to my co-host right now. Pierre McGuire, join us.
I made it 5 minutes earlier than I thought.
Wow, Pierre, you are something, my friend.
I was scrambling, but we got there. That's good. Thank you to Delta Airlines. Thank you to the people at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, a proud sponsor of the National Hockey League. Thank you for everybody to get me here safe and sound, and I'm ready to go with you.
And your co-pilot, Melanie, too.
She was a co-pilot.
I hear you. I'm sure you guys are a good team, though. I've been there with you. But, Pierre, I'm glad you're here. And we had a questionnaire just ask us, what's going on with the coaching search. And we really don't know right now. It's
what's interesting? Like, we just got to Boston, and, people want to ask questions. And I'm like, and I felt bad because usually I just stay there and answer the questions. I was like, I got to go. And I apologize. I said in advance, I'm scrambling to get to work with Jimmy Murphy. I said, I got to get going. And they all want to know, like, what's going on with the coach.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
We will see. But if we find anything out, we will let you know there. And we'll get back to the rest of your questions later. Pierre, now that I have you, let's get into last night, and then we'll look ahead to tonight. And then, of course, we'll welcome on Mike Futa in a bit.
Yep.
Pierre, look, I didn't think Carolina played a bad game. I think they left it all on the ice. I respect that. And, but Florida was just a better team. And that was the bottom line. But one thing I want to say, I was just saying this off the top here before you got here. Would you agree with me that in the last 5 years, Carter Verhaeghe is one of, if not the most clutch goal scorers in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
So this is another example of people not being experts on the property that they draft. Now, the one thing I would say, Tampa would have kept him, but yes. Tampa wasn't the original team that drafted him. So they just ran into salary cap issues, and that's why Carter ended up with the Florida Panthers. But again, that's an example of them doing the eye test on Carter Verhaeghe. Mm-hmm. But it begs the question, what happened in Toronto? What happened with New York? I get Tampa. I get the Tampa part.
Yes,
but
I do too.
The first two legs of this, I'm not sure I'm getting that part.
I'm with you on that. But he has turned into such
he's a spectacular player.
Just get a knack for it, right?
So, and I know everybody's going to say, yeah, anybody could have scored that goal after Sasha Barkov does a toe dance, off the icing line and makes a beautiful feed across the crease to Carter. But you see what he did? He got it and he ripped that. He didn't just lollygag that to the back of the net. He got it and he ripped it. But what can we say about Sasha Barkov? And I'm really surprised. And again, no disrespect meant to any of the people working in the media side. Mm-hmm. Can Dale Talon get a little love? Just a little bit of love for drafting Sasha Barkov?
I'm so with you on that.
Just do enough research to know it wasn't Billy Zito that drafted Sasha Barkov.
Nope.
Okay, It was Dale Talon and his people. Just give a little credit where credit's due.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Pierre. And you know what? To his credit, Billy Zito, I've seen him on more than one occasion credit Dale Talon for the foundation.
I know he does. And,
he does a great job of that.
I can just say this. The last time I was with Billy was at Ray Shiro's memorial, celebration of life. Billy didn't have to go to that. They were in the middle of the playoffs with Tampa. Billy went to that, and we walked into the country club together, he and I, and we were talking, and he had the great line. He goes, Ray was my agent, and I don't know why he represented me because I was no good. It was a great line. So he was self-effacing, but he gives credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
Like, he gives credit. Everybody's talking about Bobrovsky. Look at what they did and under his watch. They created this goaltending guru group that does a great job building their players up and making them better. Bobrovsky wasn't this good when he signed coming out of Columbus.
No.
In fact, that contract at the beginning wasn't looking good.
People were killing it. People were killing
that
contract.
That was bad. So all I want to say is congratulations to Florida. They deserve it. Carolina's got a lot to learn. Their roster's far from being fixed. And if they don't know that, then they're doomed. They're doomed if they don't know that. And the tail of the tape was set on the eye test by Jimmy Murphy and our group. The center ice matchups don't work. It's not even close. Just go 1 through 4 for Carolina and go 1 through 4 for Florida. Those center ice matchups don't even come close to working.
100% agree with you there, Pierre. And the other thing I want to talk about, and we were chatting about it as you were driving from the airport too. If I'm mistaken, I apologize, but I did go back. He is talking about it a lot today, and I'm pretty sure he had the original tweet where Florida is here and doing this well because they're 20 that have made the Stanley Cup final from the East. Now, I disagree with the fact that that's the only, issue. I think there's obviously you do have an advantage when you're in a new no tax state to sign players and get players to extend there. But obviously, it depends what players you get, right? And that's where the managing comes in. But there's people now saying that it doesn't matter at all on social media, and I just don't understand how you can say that, Pierre. Just clearly there's something going on there. Like with these states, I mean, you mentioned Dallas to me. Hey, they haven't made it to the Cup, but they have made it to the conference finals a lot. It's an advantage, and it's helping teams right now. And as you said to me, agents like that as well.
I saw this trend happening in 2012. I saw it happening in 2012, and I talked about it a lot on Mitch Melnick's show. And I said people aren't going to like it because everybody's like, why aren't the Canadian teams winning? Why aren't the Canadian teams getting to the final? And if you remember, the Canadian team got to the final in 2011, and then there were no Canadian teams getting anywhere near the final. And I kept saying, look, nobody wants to hear this, but there are taxation issues in Canada. There for Americans and some other people going to Canada, maybe there's some question marks about it. The free agency pool is not anywhere near fair. So I've been talking about this since 2012. And you know what? I think our guest should come on and talk about it too, because I think he'd probably have the same vision as I would have about it.
Oh, we got him. I was just texting him. He was having some issues, but here he is. Former LA Kings assistant general manager, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, Michael Futa, joining us here on the eye test. Futes, how's the traffic? Futes, can you? Oh, he's typing. He's texting me.
Am I there?
Yeah, you're on.
Holy smokes. I apologize, guys. Whenever the Leafs have a press conference, everything shuts down in the city.
Oh, Michael, that's a good line. That's good, Michael.
Good line. Mike, you know what? We'll get to the current playoffs in a bit, but let's talk about what you just said there. That press conference, Brad Trey living there today. He didn't say no, but he also clarified that they have not decided yet if they're going to bring back Tavares and Marner. Just your reaction to that. Again, we're not, but it's not a yes either. What was your reaction to that?
I really took it as there's going to be changes. I mean, I think he's been away. I think the key might for me, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, he took us through 15 minutes from the opening puck drop of game 1 to the ending, which was interesting. So he talked about the strengths I do think this was a different team. But when he got to talking about the fact that this team I think when he said when it 1-0 in Game 7, he looked down and thought it was 4-0. That tells me that there's changes brewing. And I mean, it was almost every time they do these, I've kind of learned a little bit about it. That there's, I think the key word today was DNA.
Yes.
And I mean, so you can define it 1,000 different ways. I think after the season was we got away from our system or something. They had another key term that they were sticking to. And that's the one thing about the Leafs. I wish they would have a little bit more freedom to actually speak English and talk to us instead of like I think that's the one thing that's kind of getting refreshing as we watch the Panthers move on and stuff. You get to see these guys' personalities, and you're starting to wonder if sometimes your personality bleeds into the way you play. Because just talk, like open up and talk. Like, I mean, these guys are having fun on the bench with Bissonnette, and like Pierre used to talk to guys and try and steam a personality of them. It's getting very robotic. But to get back to the hockey, yeah, I think it sounds to me like there's they don't think whether they're all. It doesn't. I'm not arguing that these guys are superstar players, whatever. But this chemistry between the group of this has not worked. They've got to decide who stays, and they've got to make. I think now contractually, it's pretty easy to see who's going to move on, and he wants to move on, which is fine. You move on and use the cap space to try and build a bit more of a grittier up front, and add some more depth down the middle. It'll be exciting. But you've seen it, Pierre. It's just it was especially because if you met Brad Treliving, man, this guy's got personality, right? And he's one funny dude, but holy smokes, it's like. It gets pretty vanilla when you're not allowed to express your personality.
Hey, Michael, the one thing I've always admired about you, and we've talked about this off the air, is you were a critical component to building those 2 Stanley Cup teams with Dean Lombardi out in L.A. And Yannetti as well. And to me, you guys never overlooked the character side of it. You never did, Michael. You never, ever did. Do you think teams are overlooking that now, Michael?
I think it's harder to find, Pierre. It isn't if you really dig. I mean, we had Trevor Lyndon on the show today, and he started into his spiel, and he was a wonderful guest. You got to give me time to tell the story. It was a classic story. But anyways, he said to me, and he was giving me the regular thing about today's athlete. They're so much better. They're so much more fit. And I said, and the game's so much better. And I said, okay, I'm going to stop you for 1 second. If the DNA of the athlete in the Trevor Lyndon era had the exposure to fitness, nutrition, and training with the DNA and the character they had, whoa, could you imagine the product we'd be seeing right now?
Well, so I'm a kid that grew up in Montreal, and I'm talking, so if I had John Beliveau in this era, and I had Henri Richard in this era, and I had Guy Lafleur in this era, and I had Steve Shutt in this era, and I had Larry Robinson in this era, and I had Guy Lapointe in this area, and I had Serge Savard. You don't think that those guys with the same training methods wouldn't kick the bejesus out of these guys?
They'd be the best leaders ever. They'd be the best leaders because some of these guys that don't have that DNA to live up to the amount of millions they'd be exposed to that kind of leadership and character. And it's not, and this isn't me saying that today's game isn't incredible. The Four Nations was still the best hockey that I've seen, speed-wise and skill-wise.
Agreed.
But you talk about the guys that took something from that. You see the guys like the Tkachuks, both of them, that came out of that. To imagine being even more first competitors, the guys that you see, even like some of the guys like Aho, that when his back was against it yesterday, he produced his best game.
Yeah.
And that's something that's just, it's hard to fathom. And so when Brad Treliving looks down from 10,000 feet, then I love that say, and he looks and says, they scored the first goal in Game 7, and I felt like it was 4-0. Mm-hmm. There's your entire interview right there. And that's something you don't roll back and teach over the summer. That means that you have to. I have an idea of my own of the players that I would add to this mix that are very. I mean, you start to add. I think this group, you start looking at guys that. I mean, you find a way. If you lose on from Marner, you find a way. You find a way to get Patrick Kane in your lineup, and at a much better price. Who's been there, done that. So when people are trying to guess how it's supposed to be done, or even if this comes through and Jonathan Toews is 100%, these are the kind of guys, and everybody's going to want them. But if you ever want to sprinkle some character and old school into your lineup that's been there, done that, and knows how to dance when the lights are the brightest, those are the kinds of guys you've added. Like I love the Tanevs and those kind of pieces. But and again, they're not going to cost you $14 million, and they're not going to be long-term guys. But right now they're free agents, and they're going to that first goal is not going to look like the fourth goal if you have players like that in your lineup.
Hey, Jimmy, you know, he's not lying about that, because I remember when there was a kid named Robin McGuire that was added to the Los Angeles Kings lineup. What did he do for your team, Michael?
Well, we had to control Daryl Sutter because that was like throwing another son into the lineup. So it was like there were certain names we weren't allowed to. Dean would give me a list on a card and say, don't ever say Dion Phaneuf or Robin McGuire out loud around Daryl Sutter, or he's either going to come and beat the tar out of us and acquire them on his own. But he knew what you were getting from a standpoint, and it's fun because down the stretch there, like, they were nice that Reg wasn't even in our lineup, but what he brought to the table from you see it in when he talks about now that old school regime where I'll take you into the alley, I'll fight you, I'll block shots. And that's how he ended up winning a Stanley Cup. But you think about all those guys, Pierre. The amount of names you could come up with, and this isn't forget the player, it's the character that you could come up with from that era that you would just thrive upon to have in your lineup. And now we talk about unicorns like reflect, and they are. And today you talk about unicorns like Tom Wilson and Matthew Nyes as unicorns, and it's like,
I agree.
You know what, they were getting in line with the rest of the pack at that time. So you just like, and that's why you see these teams that's special when you get guys like the Chucks that have been around the dressing rooms, like with their dad, and you don't have to guess what it's like to go to battle when it matters the most. And the guys like that are the teams that find. And then you have special guys like Connor McDavid that looks like they can just self-teach it. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And that's why, as much as it is, Pierre, this new this industry, I said today on the show, it's great because you can just make a bunch of predictions and there's no accountability. When you actually have a job in the industry, if you make the wrong decision, you might be held accountable. Well, you used to be able to be held accountable. Now they just fire the coach. But it was like it's like at the beginning of the year, I picked Edmonton to win the Stanley Cup, right? And I said it was based on them adding some defensemen at the deadline. And I mean, I didn't think it was going to be a revitalized Carl Klingberg or Jake Wallman or friggin', like these guys.
Troy Stetcher. You never thought Troy Stetcher was going to be that guy.
Trey Stetcher was going to be in my mix, and now you don't. And now you're like, do we really want Ekholm back in the lineup? Because you're right. That's how much character they're showing. You know what I mean? And that's when teams show the DNA, and that's why I'd like to see, as much as I want Spotter and Pete to win, I want to see Connor McDavid staring at that silver chalice again and seeing if he can, what it means to have a second run at it for guys like him and you see and obviously Draisaitl and the guys that have been through the tough times and going against the champs. I just think it's an unbelievable matchup to come in fruition. I don't think Dallas is going to go away tonight. No. I just think this group has showed so much. Ottinger is going to have one of those nights, but I think it's going to be tough for them to beat them 3 times. But I just love what Edmonton's come up with. And particularly the top guys, just how they just seem to find another, like Matty Marquez, who I love to death, was saying, God, McDavid's been quiet. And I'm like, quiet? Yeah. And I said, are you watching?
I'd like to be able to be that type of quiet every day.
We joked about it. We had fun with it, but his ideas, I mean, quietly leading the league. Because there's nothing, if you watch him live, is quiet. He's just playing a 200-foot game, but he's doing it at the speed of light. And while leading the league in playoffs.
You know what, though, Jimmy? We got to be transparent with everybody. Michael's a product of the Ontario Hockey League, and he was really good in the Ontario Hockey League for a long time. Michael, can you believe that Corey Perry at 40, and you saw him in the infancy stages, where Corey Perry's game is? He's the last man standing from the 03 draft. It's amazing.
I was so spoiled. I was probably the worst coach that could have ever been produced out of that. I coached the Ontario under-17 level, and Corey Perry was on my third line. I had Mike Richards, Jeff Carter. It was like I had all the 85 forwards from that dream team, and problem was the West had all the defensemen. I said my problem was my best defenseman was Paul Bissonnette. He doesn't like that. But we were at the time, it was funny because we had Kyle Quincy. I missed on Mark Method. Had got himself into a little silly problems at the camp, so he wasn't there. But that was when they were just stacked on the back end in the Western League, and they put him together.
Weber, Dion Phaneuf.
Yeah, they put that dream team together. Duncan Keith, I think they put the dream team together for that World Junior team. Yeah. But I mean, you could tell Corey Perry. I mean, the last thing when you're trying to coach kids at that age, there's certain kids now when you talk to them, you can tell. I used to say when you're going to combines and you meet them all throughout the year, and they'd say, "Hey, that kid was." There's a difference between a kid looking you in the eyes like Mike Richards look you in the eyes, or Corey Perry looked you in the eyes, or when a kid looks you in the eyes and one of your scouts says, "That guy's looking you right in the eyes." They said, "No, he's looking at the painting behind me." Okay. That was my difference, Pierre, when I talked about guys that had it. You know what I mean? That had it. The phony interview. But no, there's some out there, man. You just gotta find them, and it's a different kind of. You got to find coaches that can get it out of them. But man, once you find them, they're special. That's why when you look at the Florida Panthers and say, you know what, let's just decide that. Like right next, Seth Jones looks like my Lord. Now he looks like the guy that it's not like he forgot how to play hockey. He was in an environment where he couldn't excel, and now he looks like a guy that, probably could get some Conn Smythe votes. He got, and then all of a sudden you're like, maybe we're not nasty enough. Is Brad Marchand available? Holy jeez.
Yeah, let's go get him.
How about that? He goes from a first-line player in Boston to a third-line player playing with Lundell and Luostarinen, and he looks like he's just going to rip the playoffs apart.
First line in Boston, Pierre, and that's not I'm just saying. I'm not being honestly. That line, that's why you win, with that kind of depth.
Oh, we agree.
He's got a smile on his face. I said in the show, he looks like that movie Cocoon, that he went back and jumped in the old pool and came out looking like Brad Marchand in the Stanley Cup years, right? He's got her going. And those are the fun stories in the playoffs. You hate to see. I always like best on best. I'm not looking ahead, but I don't like the Hyman has been so unbelievable to lose somebody like that. But that's the battle, right? You never know. Like Reinhart, a couple inches, and they're without Reinhart on the Aho hit. So it's a tough battle. It's a battle of attrition, and Florida's been there, done that. It'll be nice to see if Edmonton's what they've learned, if they are the team that gets through, what they've learned from their long trip to the finals.
Mike, your other former team there got beaten by Florida there. What's to you when you look at that team right now? Pierre and I have looked at it and said, look up the middle. There was a difference against Florida. But other than that, are there any other things that pop out to you to say, this is what this team needs to get it over the hump?
Well, unfortunately, the same things that I was in my brief stay there, the same stuff that I was saying they needed when I was there. And I was only echoing Rod Brindamore, is that they built the back end with a bunch of trees that are exceptionally well. And they moved on from Pesci and some of the great, they lost another one, Shea and Pesci, and you see the things that were going out the door. And then they did a great, like Burns, and it looks like this Nikishin's going to be a player. And then they kind of never know what they're getting in net. They always seem to have the second best goaltender, and that's no knock, because Freddie at his best was outstanding, but you just never know what you're going to get, and you never know how long he's going to last injury wise. Mm-hmm. And up front, there's just too many small players. And it's not that they're not great, because I'm not saying Stankoven doesn't play like he's 6'4", and Seth Jarvis is one of my biggest favorite players in the league. But when you start to look at the size of the Florida defense and your top guys, it looks like Jarrett Stahl and Svechnikov look like two bullies walking around a playground with the rest of the forwards. And then they added some grit in the fourth line, but their top players get worn down. Like Seth Jarvis just got abused in that series. Like the Blake kid got abused. And it's not that they're great players, but when the rules change in the playoffs, and they do, and it's hard to get to the net, you need to have more grit up front and a little mix to go with your skill. And they've always seemed to opt to go with a smaller skilled lineup that is incredible and can kill you for they looked amazing again. They're resilient. They have the work ethic that Rod Brindamore had, but they get worn down. And when push comes to shove, it's hard when you're 5'9" to get through 6'4" players, no matter how big your heart is.
Hey, Michael, how did everybody miss on Carter Verhaeghe?
Well, the Leafs didn't. They had him.
I know.
You could build. You can solve all the Leafs problems with the 5 players that are playing other places right now. It's amazing. You take Zach Hyman, Carter Verhaeghe, Connor Brown, and there's other names. And I know it's hard because there's times players move on from play, but you can't. It's funny, you move on from players. Sometimes you keep guys you think are more skilled, but when you think about the character, throw Mason Marchment into the mix, there's exactly what your DNA needs, right? So, and it happens. People move on. I mean, thank God. My biggest one was Dominic Kubalik, who I took in the 7th round along with Mark Yannetti. And the most excited I've ever seen him was when we had a porn star come in and do the run the yoga. Okay, and that was the most pulse that he showed as a player. And we didn't know that was her side gig, but he did. And that was even more problematic, Pierre. And then only time I ever saw him score was in games that the Czech had no right winning. So like they'd get beat 6-3 by Russia and he'd get a hat trick, right? And then he didn't score in junior in Sudbury and then he gets traded to Kitchener when they needed him and he didn't score. And then he came to us and he wasn't doing it. He gets picked up on waivers the next year by Chicago when they're no longer winning and almost wins the Calder Cup with 4 goals, but he's scoring goals on a team that doesn't. And then he goes to Ottawa when they need him to score and expect him, and he doesn't do it. Yeah. So as painful as it was to almost watch him win the Calder Cup when I said get rid of him, he never scored when it mattered in big games. So the character test was right. The skill test was obviously a little off, but that's it. But you're right. Verhaeghe looks like a beast. I mean, clutch. You look at Sam Bennett. That's the Sam Bennett Brian Burke thought he was getting when he drafted him. That's the Kingston Sam Bennett, and that's one I'll never understand because I would have thought Daryl Sutter and him would have been like 2 of the best, but for whatever reason, he was never his best self in Calgary, and now you're seeing exactly what he was supposed to be when he's playing in Florida.
No, it's true. It's spot on.
Good stuff. Futa, listen, we'll let you go, my friend. We appreciate you taking the time and get home safe, okay?
Got 2 seconds, Pierre?
I do.
Oh, we got time. We have more time.
I gotta tell you this, Pierre. Sorry, Jimmy. I gotta tell you this.
Go for it.
So today, you know how hard it was for me to get when people had asked for permission from Dean Lombardi for me to interview for a GM position. So, the Vancouver Canucks had called and asked for permission to interview me for the GM job, and Trevor Lyndon was in studio today. And I walk into the office, and I didn't know this, so I walk into Dean's office, and he just starts swearing at me. Right? Yeah, you want to be a couple F1. You get out of here. Just get out of here. Just get out of here. And he gives me a piece of paper with a phone number on it. Doesn't say anything. He goes, just go call it. You want out here? Just go call it if you want to get out of the bed. So I have no name. So I go and I call the number, and it's Trevor Lyndon. And he's like, who's this? And I go, it's Mike Futa. And he starts freaking out. He goes, I don't have permission to talk to you. I don't have permission to talk to you. And Dean never granted permission. He was just so upset he gave it. So today was the first time that I've ever met Trevor Lyndon. He walked into the studio and we got to have that meeting that I was 14 years late on.
No, but that's what happens. A lot of people don't realize this. Like, I was working in a different job as a coach, and a team called for permission, and the guy that wanted to talk to me, the manager, he says, they won't let you out of your contract. I'm like, what? And then, 9 months later, I was out anyways.
It's the best. Pierre, I told this story after we win our first cup. And you can't, because guys have ways to get in touch with you to tell you they're trying to get in touch with you. It's not working.
Of course.
But it rhymes with scampering, but it never happens. And then you're like, so I'm sitting there, and I know that there's a team trying to get in touch. So I completely forget about it. We win the first cup, and Dean and I are hugging. And he goes, see, thank God you didn't go to Columbus. And I go, what? And he's like, all of a sudden gets all pale in his face. Like, what are you talking about, Columbus? He goes, nothing. And then Scott Housen had called for permission like 6 months earlier, and Dean just fired it in the trash can. So there you go.
Well, you guys built a heck of a machine out there in LA, boy. Yeah. I just think about Carter, and I think about Richards, and I think about Jordan Nolan. I think about all the guys that were brought in there. You start looking at all the guys. It's just amazing. And you saw it prime time, up close and personal. Think back to Stamkos and Doughty going 1 and 2, Michael. You couldn't. That
was so much fun. Don Cherry called it an OHL All-Star team.
Yeah, you couldn't go wrong. It's unbelievable.
And it was fun. And I got last one for it. So I call it, this is star players can't scout, Pierre. This falls into that. So it's Stamkos sweepstakes. So I call him up and I go, Steven, I know you're going to Tampa. I said, who should we take number 2? And I said, I gave him like 3 or 4 names, and he goes, Bogosian. And I go, Steven, and Zach, God bless, he's had a great career, Cups, 1,000
still
games.
playing.
And I looked at him and I said, you wouldn't take Doughty? And I said, thank God you're playing. Thank God you're playing.
Well,
Anyways,
I'm going to leave it at that. We'll have a
Thanks,
full
guys.
conversation. I got a couple stories like that too.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome. We appreciate you taking the time, my
thanks,
man.
guys. Have a
All
great
right,
day.
Michael, thank you.
Mike Futa join us. Pierre, he's the type of guy I'd love to just sit in the Heart Bar in Dublin, in Belfast, or the Thirsty Lemon in Dublin, and
He's just a hockey person.
Just
It's
talk
not
hockey,
about politics.
right?
It's not
No.
about politics. Just go talk hockey. And
Yeah.
he and Mark Yannetti did an amazing job there working for Dean Lombardi. They did a lot of, and there were a lot of other guys that were there too that did really good work.
Yep.
But he and Mark did a lot of really good work there.
Yep.
And I used to see them on the road all the time. Al Murray was another one before he got let go. Al did a lot of heavy lifting there to build that up to where it got to be. But Mike was a really important part of that.
When was Al Murray let go, Pierre? Was it right before they
I'll tell you right now, it was a World Junior in Leksand, Sweden. So that would have been 2007, the 2007 World Junior. He got let go just before and then he goes into Hockey Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
they
when
win in 08.
Yep.
They win in 09. They lose in 10 on the golden goal, and they lose in 11 to the Russian team that had Tarasenko, Kuznetsov, and Panarin as a line. And that line ran roughshod over the Canadians. Dave Cameron was the coach of Team Canada. And I called it the greatest meltdown in Canadian World Junior history. And it was. They melt in the third period. That line just said, we're taking the puck, and you guys aren't allowed to have it, and we're going to just destroy you. And that's exactly what they did.
Wow.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, obviously in hockey circles, Pierre, everyone knows who Al is. But for those our listeners and viewers out there, just look up his resume, guys.
I just had the nicest chat with Al probably 3 or 4 days ago. He's still working for Tampa. He's a senior advisor for Julian Brisebois. He's a tremendous guy. He lives in Regina. He knows he knows everywhere. He knows the whole world. He's outstanding. Al's outstanding at what he does. He's really good.
Speaking of Tampa, Pierre, the guy you mentioned to me,
Stacey Roost.
Yeah,
he's going to the Islanders. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good hire for them. Julian's got horsepower in his front office. Like they've got horsepower with guys coming along. He's not one of those guys that's been afraid to hire people because they're qualified.
Yeah.
He's
That's
not afraid to do that.
He kind of builds his front office like he builds his roster. Hey,
so he's not afraid. He's not afraid to do that. See, the problem we have, Mike even knows. You hear Mike kind of allude to it. It's not what it used to be. It used to be you just go hire the best people. Now that doesn't happen anymore. You hire the people that are the least amount of threat to your job. And which is unfortunate. When Craig, can you imagine? This never would happen today.
No.
Craig Patrick hired Bob Johnson and Scotty Bowman on the same day.
Yep.
And he was a GM of a team that missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
That would never happen today.
That's
zero chance.
That's like, I'm trying to think of another sport and the equivalent of what that would be. It's like Belichick and Lombardi on the same staff or something. I mean, really, it really is.
Look at that's one thing I like about Belichick.
He wasn't afraid to put.
You're not afraid. He says, "I'm the head coach. Like I'm going to hire you because you're the best at what you do."
Yep.
And I don't care if the whole league hates you. I'm hiring you anyways.
Exactly.
Like Josh McDaniels, like this quarterback whisperer that everybody loved, but he's been a head coach in Vegas. It didn't work. Head coach in Denver. It didn't work. And when it doesn't work, what happens? Back to New England.
Yeah. And by the way, he's back there again.
Back to New England. Like Vrabel. I think Vrabel just brought him back.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right back to New England.
They're both of the Belichick tree. So there you go. So yeah, it's unreal. Before we get to our Q&A here, Pierre, just your thoughts on tonight, what Dallas needs to do to stay alive. Like I said yesterday, I thought they played their best game in the series. It was unfortunate they lost, but I just look at it and say, you know what? Whatever you did the other, just keep doing it. Could you do it a little bit better? Maybe, but keep doing it. I wouldn't veer away from much of what they did the other
No, I like what Mike said, though. He expects Ottinger to have a good game. I expect Ottinger to have a good game. I know you do as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
No, you saw though Ekholm's back?
Yeah, they're going to be rust there. That's not going to be easy. Plus, he's on the road. So matchups are going to go in the favor of Dallas. Which is good for them.
I think we see it as a game 6.
I do too, actually. I think there's going to be a game 6 on Saturday night.
Yep.
I do.
All right. And by the way, we were talking about the NBA and the NHL both having the potential of their conference finals all ending in 5 games. 2 of them did last night, just noting that. So Oklahoma City won and Florida won. The TV markets are praying for Dallas to win. I'll tell you that.
Well,
all right.
I'll tell you one thing right now. The TV numbers are an issue.
They are a big issue. That's what I'm trying to say, Pierre. It's like a double whammy. It's just, and it's going to matter. Like we were talking about when we were saying before, we were talking about, the income tax and all that, and teams in the no tax states have an advantage. And somebody had countered to me on social saying, well, you could still go to another city with taxes and make it back in sponsorship.
How do you know that? How do you know you're going to get, and how do you don't think those sponsored dollars are taxed? They're taxed.
Exactly. Thank you.
I'm not going to say the name of the player, okay? But I know a guy who went, and I won't say the city in California, but he was in a California market, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that year, and he was making 7 figures,
mm-hmm.
and he was single, not married. At the end of that year, he had maybe $250,000 left from a 7-figure contract. So what went in there was cost of living. Mm-hmm. So you have to rent an apartment
out in LA. Yeah.
I'm not saying the city. I'm not saying the city. Okay. Car, cost of living, groceries, and taxation. Mm-hmm. City tax, state tax, and federal tax.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it all, I won't tell you how many 7-figure. He had $250,000 saved up.
That's rough.
And he's not a Playboy party guy or any of that.
Okay.
Just
my question to you on the sponsorship thing, though, Pierre, right? Kind of connecting the dots here to what you're talking about, the TV issues going on right now, and that with TV ratings not doing as expected, and companies obviously they look at that and they'll say, well, I don't know, maybe I don't want to advertise on the NHL anymore. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I don't want my company's name up on the billboard there. Will that affect players too and sponsors where like, maybe I don't want to sponsor a hockey player as opposed to maybe sponsoring a baseball guy?
No, now we're doom and glooming. That's drama.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I'm asking you straight out.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. Being
okay,
totally
good.
frank. I think the league's actually in a good place that way.
Okay, good.
There's more sponsorship opportunities for players than ever before. I think players are more prepared to go out into the public domain and actually be part of that. I think it's more positive than it's ever been.
Good.
We have more. I think the access has been very important. It's been very good. Yep. So I'm not a doom and gloomer on that. My concern are the TV numbers, not so much for now. It's for the next contract, for the league. And they they'll keep telling you, don't worry, we got streaming. Okay, well, nobody's actually perfected that part of it yet.
No. The
streaming part of it. And, and I'm going to give you credit for this because you were the first person to say it. They had a cat in the bag. They knew they had the Rogers deal for 12 years, and it never leaked. It never leaked. And everybody's like, how could they be projecting these cap revenues to be going up so much? How could they project that? Because there's no way, based on the numbers they have now, that cap ever should have gone up the way it did. They knew they had the deal from Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big part of that. So you were nailed that. You were the first person on that, and you were the first person on that.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, I'm with you too. But the blackout thing too, we discussed, Pierre. I mean, we know people.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, as a father of a kid who plays professional hockey, and he's in a marketplace where they're kind of stuck because it's football, basketball, and baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And all his teammates want to watch a hockey game let's say on a Thursday night, on a dark night where they're not playing, and they can't watch it because it's blacked out in the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
Insane.
Yeah. So, I mean, I asked Marty Walsh about that, and he was under the impression it was being fixed. But
that's a bunch of bunk. It has not been fixed.
To his credit,
that tells you it's been fixed isn't telling you the truth.
And to his credit, I know that he followed up on it, and he's looking into it again because he Yeah, I remember when the first time we spoke before the season, Pierre, you remember that too. I said it to you. He goes, this guy really cares about that. Like, that was a big hot button issue.
It was. And you know what?
And I respect that. Like,
and I'm going to tell you how it came to my attention, and he won't mind me telling you. I was doing, you know how my setup is. I watch all these games.
Yes.
And Scotty called me up and he goes, I can't watch the Tampa game. I go, what? He goes, I can't watch the Tampa game. Are you seeing it? I said, I'm watching it right now. He goes, well, they say I'm blacked out. I can't watch it.
Jeez.
So I'm like, call, and I won't tell you who at the league. I said, call this person at the league and find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He called somebody who I'm pretty sure I know who it is because I told him that's who you should call. But it was blacked out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do want to
that thing's got to go. That's got to get out.
I want the fans out there to know that is something that is on the forefront that they're going to try their best to eliminate for next season. So, all right, let's get to our sponsors. TCS Customs and Logistics. Unlock the full potential of your shipping operation with TCS Customs and Logistics from around the corner to around the world. Flatbeds to air freight, customs clearance to drawback consulting. TCS is a one-stop shop for all things transport, moving pieces and delivering a peace of mind. For a no-obligation customs or freight quote, contact sickpodcast at shiptcs.com. Again, that is sickpodcast at shiptcs.com. And, of course, our wonderful sponsors, Vetway, where you can still go all the way with Vetway and get up to $200 on your first bet if it loses. Now, that's only available for a new member. So if you aren't a member yet, go to that QR code right in front of you there, sign up, and redeem your welcome offer. Or if you can't see that right now, go to the website, go to the details section and do the same thing there. And you can get your new membership and that welcome offer. Remember, it is not available in Ontario. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 18 plus and always bet responsibly. Let's go to my sick pick of the nights.
It's time for Sick Picks. Brought to you by Vetway.
All right, I'm already on record as saying it, so I'll back it up with one of my picks here. I believe the Dallas Stars will force a Game 6 here. I like them on the money line, plain and simple, just to win. No special things there, just win the game, and I think they will do that. You can get that at minus 130 value there. As far as props go, I'm on a little roll here. I've given you 2 straight anytime goal guys, thanks to Anton Lindell last night. I like Tyler Seguin. Hasn't found the board, I believe, since game 1, right? Tyler Seguin to find the back of the net in a big game here, a must win for the Dallas Stars. He knows he's getting towards the end. He might not have another chance at a cup like this, so I like him to light the lamp there. And as for the Edmonton Oilers, give me Evander Kane to light the lamp at plus 350. So there we go. All right, let's get to the Q&A. What do we got? Bill Van Vagel, does Carolina need a change to their DNA also, or just more experience? Bill, you read my mind as Mike was talking about that and talking about what Trey Living said there. I was thinking the same thing with Carolina. I think and we've been on the record of saying this numerous times, Pierre, we agree, they need more eye test guys for sure.
I said at the beginning of the year, and I'm not going to change from it. This is a referendum on analytics. If you're a pro analytics, keep doing it your way. Keep doing it your way. I'll take the Florida way.
Yep, I'll take the Florida way as well. All right, next question. Franco, you're the Panthers. Excuse me. Who do you think you have a better chance of winning against, Edmonton or Dallas, and why?
Well, first of all, Frank, teams don't look at it that way.
I was just going to say that. I didn't want to see.
You don't prepare your team like that.
Yeah.
So nobody really talks about that. But what I would say is, if you're asking Jimmy and I, who aren't the Florida Panthers, I think it'd be probably better to play Dallas than to play Edmonton, and for numerous reasons. But one of them I'll say is, I think the center ice matchup for Florida beats the center ice matchup for Dallas.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too, Pierre. And look, I'm as a fan, I want to see right now either team. I don't mind, but I think a rematch is looking real fun right now.
Well, last time we had a rematch, you got to go back to 07 and 08. Or sorry, 08 and
08, 09, yeah.
08 and 09 with Detroit and Pittsburgh. And I was, right in the middle of it all. And I can tell you that was pretty special.
That was fun.
Both those series were fantastic.
I'll tell you what, those media members covering this, they're gonna have a lot of frequent mileage racked up if that's
No, I don't. No, I'm not sure they will because I think the league will put on a charter if it's.
Oh, is that okay?
If it's
Yeah,
Florida at Edmonton, the
that's
league
smart.
usually has. Yeah, they usually do a charter.
Gotcha. All right, next question. Alex Ivanowski, when can we expect? What can we expect from Ekholm tonight in his return back? I feel like it's a good spot for him to come back. I've seen guys wait too long in the playoffs and come back during Game 7, and it's no good. Yeah, Alex, I mean, like, I think Pierre already said it there. I just look at the other side of the ice there. It's taken Heiskanen a long time to kind of get back to his full self. Not that he's playing poorly or anything, but there's been rust. I think it's going to be the same thing tonight with Ekholm.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, they'll watch his minutes. I don't know how hard he's been skating. I'm sure he's been skating really hard. The assistant coaches won't get enough credit for it, but they're the guys that are responsible for the extra guys being ready to play. And that's your job. And that's the one thing I learned early in my career. When you're going on a prolonged playoff run and you got extra players, you better make sure you have those guys razor sharp, because if they get called in and they're not ready to play, that's on you.
Yeah.
That's not on the player. That's on you as the coach.
Just seeing over here, too, before we go to the next question, Perlo letting you know, Pierre, that Florida's an analytic team. Pierre.
Who said that?
Perlo Wisdom, if we can.
No. Florida had analytics for a long time, and they backed out of the analytics, and they've gone more eye tests. If they weren't eye tests, why would they have Rick Dudley working there? Mm-hmm. You know, why would they have Paul Fenton working there? They used to be a strict analytic team. 100% agree. They still have an analytics department like every team in the league, but their eye test matters a ton.
Right. I mean, if you were going to look at percentages, I don't know how you quantify it, right? But if you were going to say they're this percent analytics or this percent eye test, I would put it at my opinion. I'm more like 60-40, 70-30, maybe even 80-20 in terms of the eye test. That's the way I look at that team.
If that's what you want to believe, go ahead.
Yeah.
They'll just keep laughing at the rest of the league and adding guys like Nico Mikkola and adding, guys like Sam Bennett and trading away players like Jonathan Huberdeau. If you want to believe that, go right ahead. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you. Like, that's not what this is about. You want to believe that? Go ahead, believe it.
Next question. Alex B. Smith. Hey, guys, just curious to hear your thoughts on Mike Vellucci, the newest assistant to join Jeff Blashill's staff in Chicago.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
I don't know Mike enough to comment, Pierre, so I can't.
He's got a lot of experience. He's been a head coach. He's been an assistant coach. He's coaching the American Hockey League, coaching the NHL, coaching the Ontario League. I mean, Blash has to know him. That he didn't just hire him to hire him. Mm-hmm. It's, again, I think it's going to be an interesting staff. Anders stayed there, Sorenstam, and he's a very good coach. I can tell you that. He's a very good coach. I'm bullish on Michael Pekka. I think Michael's outstanding. Yep. Before anybody even knew Michael was coaching, I was writing and talking about him when he was in Washington working for Peter as a face-off consultant. So Michael's good, and I think Blashill's an excellent communicator, and Vellucci's learned a lot. So hey, look, it's fine. It's good. It's a good staff, very good staff.
Next question. Steve Lash, what are your thoughts on the handshake line? Should it be just for the players or coaches allowed? For Paul Maurice, it should be just for the players. Thoughts? Pierre, all I'm going to say quickly, I think it should be up to each team.
Yeah, that's what I think. I
get where Paul's coming from, but I don't think he should be dictating to Rod Brindamore what his team does.
If Rod wants to go shake hands with Matthew Tkachuk or wants to go shake hands with anybody on Sasha Barkov, mm-hmm. Bobrovsky, it doesn't matter. I think it's to each his own. I really do. Yeah. I think what used to happen is the coaches would shake hands in front of the benches, and then you peel off and you go behind the line.
Yeah,
it's to each his own. I whether you agree with Paul or disagree, Paul's entitled to do what he wants to do with his staff.
Exactly.
And I think Rod's entitled to do what he wants to do. As long as the coaches acknowledge each other in front of the benches and move along. I would never try to legislate that one way or the other. I personally, this is just me, when you're part of a group that draws up a game plan to beat another team and you beat them and you know what you did to beat them in terms of the physical beating you put on guys, I think it's important to go acknowledge, say, hey, I have a ton of respect for you. I know what you went through. Mm-hmm. You may not have won this series, but, man, you won my respect.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that. Now everybody's entitled to their own opinion. They are. That's fine.
All right. Next question. Bill Van Vigo. Could Pavel Zacha be a trade target for the Habs? The two teams never trade, but it seems to make sense. I don't see them hooking up on a trade there. I know that Zacha's name is getting floated around right now, maybe for cap reasons or whatever, but I haven't heard anything on Zacha right now. That's all I'll tell you. So
I don't think it would be a fit. I think he's I think he's a winger more than a centerman. That's
I'm
just
with you, Pierre.
me.
I'm with you. I didn't want to.
I know that's why it didn't work in Jersey, because they couldn't find a way for him to play center. So
Yep. Yeah. I think they could find a better 2C than him. That's all I'll say. And that's no offense to him.
no, he's a good. Hey, look, he's a good player.
Yeah.
But
By the way,
he's a
one of the
winger.
nicest players I've ever interviewed.
But that's what I mean. I think he's a winger. Look, Jersey didn't really want to move on from him, but they couldn't find a place to play him at center.
Yep.
So, no, I don't think that's a fit.
There you go. All right, next question. Randy Workman, if you're the Flames, you inquire on Marco Rossi. It depends what happens. I know we've mentioned a couple times, would they ever be interested in trading Kadri? I mean, I don't know. What do they have?
No, here's my big question for Randy, because he's on that Calgary pretty good,
well.
and I really respect his knowledge of the team. Do they play Coronado at center or wing next year? Because if you're playing him at center, then no, I have no interest in Marco Rossi. But
let's see what he's asking for. Supposedly, he's reportedly asking for maybe even $7 million a year. So,
who Rossi is?
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Who's they?
The insiders.
Okay.
I would not give him that, Pierre. I'll tell you that. So yeah, I agree with Pierre there. I don't know if there's a fit up the middle in Calgary.
I would just like to know if there are any Calgary people, and you don't have to give us your name. Are you playing Coronado at the wing, or are you playing him at center next year? Because he's legit. He's really good. I've watched him so long. And Jimmy, before even Calgary fans knew about this guy we were talking about, I mean, he's a really good player. Really good player. Inside it's Coronado wing. So there you go. That's what I think. That's
where would you play him here?
I would play at the wing.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't know what their plan is. That's why in college, when he was playing at Harvard, he played both, but he dominated at center, except for a couple games where they had heavy matchups on him. Like Cornell would have heavy matchups on him. Colgate would have heavy matchups on him. And they had guys that were big enough to do it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So he didn't have as productive against those two teams in particular.
I'm going to say this too, and just for Randy specifically. Randy, I think they are going to be one of the most interesting teams in the offseason. Not enough people are talking about it.
I'm with Jimmy on that. I agree with Jimmy on this.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching them carefully. All right, next question.
Smart to do that. I agree with you.
Chris Blue Shirts. Hey, Pierre, question for you. You keep talking about depth at center. Look at the Rangers. Miller, Zibanejad, Trocheck, and Edstrom. Not too bad. Have a good time this weekend. Enjoy your families.
Well, no, so that's a good point. So here's my biggest question. Which one of those guys is your number one center? Because I don't think Mika's that guy anymore.
Nope.
And I don't think Vinny's ever been that guy. So if you're putting JT there, I don't even know if that's where do you know what I'm saying? So that's how you got to start doing the matchup thing.
I think there's out of the ones you mentioned there, Pierre, I look at they've got 2 3Cs and 1 2C. I think Miller's a 2C.
So we're on the same. That's what I'm saying. So
yeah, they need
those names are
1C.
I love Chris's, because Chris makes really good points about New York.
Yep.
And those are sexy names. Like, Miller's a sexy name. Mika Zibanejad is a sexy name. Vinny Trocheck's a sexy name.
Mm-hmm.
Edstrom's a really good depth center iceman. Like, I know their team really well.
Yep.
But which one of them is Barkov? Which one of them is Bennett? And I can say this with comfort.
Yep.
Which one of them understands their role like Lundell?
Yep. All right. Next question. Juice_031017. What's the scouting report on top NHL prospect Carter Bear?
It's positive. It's really positive. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, no, I've been reading up on him, Pierre, and obviously he went through a big injury there. He's really fought back hard to get it. So if anything, I'm looking at like, well, this kid, he doesn't give up. That's one thing.
Yeah, no, the scouting report's really positive on him. I'm looking forward to more breakdowns. That's, I start doing. So it gets easier now to do that just because they're for fewer games. We've already got one series over, potential for another one to be over. And if the other one's over tonight, we don't start the Stanley Cup till June the 4th, I believe. Yes. But if this one keeps going, then it's June the 7th. So that's where you kind of get a better feel for it.
All right, next question. Steve Lash. Matthew Darr said, that Patrick Waugh is sticking around and will have the ability to bring in his own assistants. Bridgeport coaches will let go. Do you think Darsh brings in Benoit Gruel for Bridgeport?
Well, if he was smart, he would. Now, the one thing I'd say is there's a sense of familiarity there. Benoit Gruel coached their team in Syracuse. Benny's a tremendous coach. And I think he and Matthew have a very good relationship. And I know that he and Stacy Roost have a very good relationship. Benoit Gruel's a really good coach. I'd like to get him on the show because I think it would help him. I think it would really help him.
You should do that.
He's misperceived because he doesn't come out and present like a slick guy. He's just a really good hockey guy.
Yeah.
And I would like to. I'm going to try to track Benny down because I know he's overseas this year. Try to track him down, see if we can't get him on. But he would be a good guy, Jimmy, to have on. But I think whomever wrote that to us, that's
Steve Flash, I believe, right?
Steve, that's a good take.
Can you pull it up from Ken? Pretty sure it was Steve.
That's a really good take because there's a relationship there with Matthew and Benny. So,
Sammy says it was Steve. All right.
Okay, that's a great take. Really good take.
For sure. All right, next question. Franco, what do you think of Matty Beniers? I don't see why Seattle would trade him, but if they do, would he be a good fit?
First of all, I don't think I'm just going to say
I don't see them trading him, but
I don't think they're trading him. But if he's being traded, that's a fit. He's a Boston kid. He went to Milton Academy, went to University of Michigan, part of the U.S. Hothouse program, played for the South Shore Kings. I watched him play 5 straight years. You should have seen those matchups between Mid-Fairfield and South Shore Kings.
I would imagine one Kent Hughes might have seen him play a couple times.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen him more than a couple times. So there was, Matty would be great. Awesome family, great parents. Father's an awesome person. Had a brother that played at Bowdoin College. They're Northeast people. That's not to say I if you're a Seattle fan, please, you're not
saying they are
being traded. Please don't.
I'd be
We're
shocked.
respecting this guy. He's really. He would be a perfect number 2 there. He would be an elite 2 there.
All right, next question. Bill Van Wiegel, do you expect anything radical with Leafland in terms of changes? Maybe put more resources to the defense or more 4-line overall depth or a change in amateur scouting?
They did amateur scouting last year. Mark Leach took over as a scout in Toronto. So they lost Wes Jarvis. He went to Pittsburgh. They put Mark Leach in. So amateur scouting's already been addressed there. I don't think that's an issue. You got to have draft picks to have amateur scouting. They've been trading draft picks forever to try to stay relevant in the NHL. They've been playing heavy on the college free agent market. Some of them have hit. Bobby McMahon's a good example. Some of them haven't hit, and I'm not going to go down that road who hasn't hit yet. I don't think that's appropriate. But I would say is that I do think there'll be changes there. I do think there'll be big names out. And I think that's appropriate.
All right. Next question. A to Z me. What's up, buddy? If you guys were running the Canes, what would you try to do to get them over the hump? They're obviously a skilled team. It always seems to hit a dead end in late May. I think Fute's really nailed it with the size. They need more size up front. Also, too, and again, Freddie Anderson, when healthy, is a good goalie, but he's hardly ever healthy now. They need to make a change, in my opinion. I think it's long overdue between the pipes. Those would be my 2 biggest things.
That's all legit. And then the other thing is I would have an end of the year debrief with the coaches and talk about philosophy in terms of how you play the game. Because what works in the regular season in terms of the high shot totals, that doesn't work in the playoffs.
Yep. All right, next question. Kevin McClafferty. Hi, guys. Wanted to see if you've heard. Yes, we did. Stacey Rose or Judd Brackett are candidates to join the New Islanders front office. And Pierre, have a great time at the wedding. Thanks, Kevin.
Well, Judd's in Minnesota, so I don't know how that would happen.
Yeah, his name's been floating around today, Pierre, right when all that broke.
I don't
so.
know how that would happen. I mean, but unless Minnesota doesn't want him back.
Mhm.
And that, Judd lives in the Cape. He's a Cape Cod guy.
Yep.
In terms of Stacey, he's going there. Like Stacey's going to the app. So yeah.
All right, next question. Renaissance Resistor. Hey Pierre, who did you want Ottawa to take in 2021 with the 10th overall pick? I don't know if you're allowed to answer that, Pierre.
I'm not allowed to answer it, but I can tell you one thing. I stayed right out of it because I got hired 5 days before the
That's
draft.
what I was going to ask you, because somebody asked me about this the other day on social. Said, well, wasn't Pierre all behind all that whole draft? And I said, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure he was hired right
It had
before.
nothing to do with the draft. In fact, they told the owner, I'm going to sit there, but I'm not getting involved.
Good on
If
you.
the guys asked me for intel, I'll give them intel. But I didn't work amateur
Yeah.
scouting that year. I worked it the way I'm doing it now, watching tapes and games. And I don't think it's appropriate to come in and hi-hat. And that's a term I used. I said, I don't want to hi-hat anybody on the scouting staff. I don't think it's appropriate. But would I have done something different? Probably. But they did what they did. The pick that year they took was Tyler Boucher. They took Brian Boucher's son.
All right, next question. Bill Van Viegel, is there a plan in place for when Gary Bettman wants to step down? Is Bill Daly being groomed, or is it a position they recruit for? I don't have an answer for that, so I'm not going to.
All I can say is on this show, we had breaking news probably 3 or 4 months ago. We had Craig Leopold, the owner of the Minnesota Wild, who's on the committee. And he said that they will be proactive in terms of how they're going to approach when Commissioner Bettman steps down. And it was breaking news at the time.
Yep.
And Mr. Leopold didn't say anything wrong. He wasn't untoward towards anything. And I thought he was very professional, as a matter of fact. And so, is Commissioner Bettman still the commissioner? You're darn right. Do I think he belongs there? The answer is, yeah, I do. He took over the league. It was a $500 million a year business. Now it's almost a $6.2 billion a year business. So he deserves a lot of credit. There's going to be another round of expansion. And then I think maybe a collective bargaining agreement and expansion. And then I think maybe he decides to
wrap it up. Yep. I think that's the bow right there.
Yep.
And I'm with you too, Pierre. Look, do I agree with everything he's done? No, but there's no arguing how much he's helped the game of hockey. You can't. The facts are right there. And the one other thing too, and look, when I was a fan, I was just like most fans. I didn't understand how much, what his position is. It's not always him that's making those decisions. He's working for the owners, and he's the guy that has to tell us sometimes the bad news. It's not always him that's creating the bad news. So, as I worked in this industry, I got to see a lot of that where that happens.
The only quibble I've ever had with the commissioner, not going back to the Olympics after 2014.
100%.
I was really outspoken about it. I didn't agree with it. I still don't agree with it. I think it was a colossal mistake not to go back. And they had their reason. They said transportation to Korea was tough and they didn't want to go to China. But why did you go play exhibition games in China if you didn't want to go back?
Right.
You did that. I didn't do that. You did it. Why'd you go to Australia? I didn't agree with that. That's the only time I can tell you over. He and I so I started 2 years before he did in the league. I started in 1990.
Essentially, you came in the same
almost
era.
the same time. The second game he was commissioner of the league, he was at a game in Quebec City, Hartford versus Quebec. We won the game 2-1. It was a violent game.
Oh yeah, those were fun.
It was a violent game. Page was coaching Quebec, and I was coaching Hartford. And in the old Colisée, for those that remember, you were on top of everything.
Yeah.
And there was a fight. I want to say, I know on my team it was Jimmy McKenzie, and I think it was Timmy Hunter for Quebec at the time.
That's
right in front of the Nordiques bench, and Jimmy was both guys unbelievably tough, really tough. I don't think the commissioner had ever seen that before up close.
Welcome to hockey, commissioner.
Because there was a picture on the front page of the Quebec paper. Back in those days, you didn't leave after the game; you stayed. He was like this. I don't think he was seeing that stuff up close.
Good stuff. All right, next question. FFFF. I like Erickson Eck and I like McTavish. Could you guys give us a rundown on their strengths and weaknesses to play as second line center?
Oh my, you're not getting Erickson Eck,
Yeah.
but he's a poor man's version of Sasha Barkov. That's what he is. He's Sasha Barkov light. Erickson Eck's a really good player. Like he's amazing.
Why are we hearing so much about the Ducks potentially moving on from McTavish? Is it because they might go up to the free agent market and make a big splash?
I think it's contracts and free agency.
Yeah.
Mason McTavish, a heck of a player.
Oh.
If you could, like, I've been talking about him forever.
Yep.
That 21 draft when I was in Ottawa, he was a guy that was on the board, but he got taken early.
Yeah.
Eklund was another guy on the board. He got taken by San Jose. I mean, you look at some of the guys. There were guys on the board, but again, it's the way the cookie crumbles.
All right, next question. Perlo Wisdom, what's up, Perlo? Pittsburgh, low-key going to rebuild or do a quick retool?
I think rebuild.
I think rebuild, too. They may try to pitch it as a quick retool, but it's a rebuild.
I don't know. They try to pitch. Yeah, forget. I'm not going to say anything else. All I'm going to say is they got work to do there.
Mm-hmm. All right, next question. Bill Van Viegel, will CHL clubs scout more into areas they may have neglected due to the NCAA ruling, or do they just scout harder in their home provinces, or both? I think both.
Well, you territorially, you can only do so much.
Right, but they're allowed in some
if
states,
you're a Western Hockey League team, you're going into northern North Dakota, you're going into California, you're going into the state of Washington, you're going into Minnesota, and that's kind of where your line's drawn. And then those other guys got to go into the Ontario League, and the New England guys have to go up into the Quebec League. We were living in Connecticut when Ryan got drafted by Blainville.
That's right. He went to his camp, right?
But he was born in Saint Agathe, Quebec, so he had no choice. I was contacted by a team in the Ontario League who said if he goes on waivers and he clears in the Quebec League, then we could take him on a team in the Ontario League. And I would have probably let him go. This was before this new rule.
Mm-hmm.
But now with the new rule, I mean, who knows?
I don't know if you saw it, Pierre, because I know you're traveling, and it's my bad. I should have sent it to you. But there's a lot of reports today that Carbonell might go to Boston College. The Q.
That'd be interesting.
That'd be a big pickup, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, that'd be interesting.
All right, next question. Steve Lash again. We discussed last week how Ian Lapierre was fired. I'm thinking you, Steve, when that happened a few days ago, but he's hired as hockey operations advisor. You've seen that before.
Oh my gosh, many times before. Yeah, that's good, and I'm glad they did that. That's a very smart. So I'll tell you why that's smart. It shows they're not cutthroat. It shows that they respect the loyalty that Ian's given the organization. It really shows how much they respect him as a hockey person because he's a very good hockey person. And I also think it shows that they're large, they're in charge, and they're stable. Mm-hmm. They're not just going to start to jettison people here, left, right, and center. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with – I know Patrick's staying with the Islanders. Mm-hmm. Who does Patrick bring in as an assistant or assistants? Because Tommy Albaline and Johnny McLean – two guys that I really think highly of. They were Lou Lamoriello guys. They're Lou guys. Both of them are.
Why they're moving on.
They're not there anymore.
Yeah.
But I get that.
Who were the assistants when he was in Colorado, Pierre? Do you remember?
Patty?
Yeah.
I can tell you one. Jacques Cloutier was one of them.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna pull it.
Cloutier was one. Trying to remember now. That's a few road trips ago. I can't remember.
So he was last there 2015-16. It was Tim Army, Dave Farish, and the goalie coach was Francois Allaire.
So you had Dave Farish had come from Anaheim. Francois Allaire. Okay. That Francois was his guy. Francois is the one that taught him how to play the position.
Oh, yeah. Tim Harmon.
And Timmy's a good Timmy Harmon.
He's still in Anaheim, or did he get let go?
He was in Anaheim. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I wonder if they reunite. Who knows? All right, next question. I think that's it. Yep, that's it. Good stuff. Pierre, I'm glad you made it early, actually. We appreciate your efforts. And big thanks to Mike Futa for joining us here on the eye test. That was great. Thanks to you for your questions there. Pierre, so you're feeling a game 6?
I am.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I agree with Mike too.
Game 6.
The difference tonight.
Yeah. Got a big TV day tomorrow on CBS HQ.
And when is the wedding? Tomorrow? Or,
no, tomorrow's a rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. And then Saturday. So
we will be on the air before then. All right, my friend. Enjoy.
We will.
Hope you can settle in. Enjoy the hockey tonight. Everyone else out there, the same to you. Thanks to everybody up in Montreal helping us out on the boards. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.